How you doing, everybody? Hope you guys had a wonderful holiday. There's been some news in the world of Marvel Snap we want to talk about. Really haven't talked about news from Marvel Snap in quite a while, but I do think this is pretty important, so let's talk about the news. So first thing off, probably the most important thing is just the publisher change. So Marvel Snap's publisher Byte-dance will be leaving the gaming market, which is a little bit unfortunate, but it's something they reported they weren't having too much success in the gaming ecosystem. Even though Marvel Snap itself is doing very well, it was their best game by far, and overall, it seems that the gaming aspect of their company wasn't performing as well as they would hope. So, ByteDance, famously known for TikTok, and also has like a Chinese version of TikTok, which is also doing very well. So, they're a pretty big company in their own right, but just they're looking for other things to do, other ways to use their resources. So overall, this isn't necessarily the biggest deal for Marvel Snap in particular. It just means very likely they'll have to find another publisher, which honestly, Marvel Snap is doing pretty well, right? It's grossing almost 100 million this year, probably more because this data isn't super recent, so obviously they're gonna have more gross than it's shown here, but it's just showing you like how it's doing in comparison to other card games, right? Doing better than Hearthstone, doing better than Magic, doing better than Yu-Gi-Oh. So it's not necessarily in trouble or anything. It's not a big deal for Marvel Snap in particular. It's just unfortunate they have to spend some time, some resources figuring out who their next publisher should be. So they did recently have make a post about it, since people were talking about it, that people have expressed concerns, but it's not really up issue for them. So, and I think this is pretty true. There isn't too much danger or anything we should take away from this. This is just something kind of separate from Marvel Snap, but that does affect them. So it's just something to talk about. The only big things from publisher changes that we might notice as players might just be the monetization aspect, but that's really up to Secondary to kind of find a publisher that won't really diverge from their philosophy, their day by day. So overall, it shouldn't be too big of a deal, but it is important to mention that this is happening. So if you see anything funky, that might be just them working out the kinks of a new publisher or anything like that. So definitely an interesting thought, but it's also pretty interesting as to look at it. So ByteDance was like, oh, their gaming aspect isn't doing well, but when you look at the numbers, right, Marvel Snap is doing fantastic, but they're like comparing their gaming aspect to like Genshin and Honkai Star Rail, right? Those ones that are like at the top, they're trying to compete with those numbers, and obviously no one else is doing those numbers, in that aspect. So it's definitely an interesting way when you look at shareholders and how they kind of evaluate a game doing well compared to like general public, or just looking at the numbers. And Marvel Snap's number one in the card game market, but that's not good enough, right? So weird takeaway, but overall it shouldn't be too big of a deal. But it is important to mention that that is something that they might be dealing with in the next year. Next thing I do want to talk about is just their schedule. So they did say that they delayed the patch, and they did say for the holiday schedule, there's going to be one on December the 5th, and then one on January the 9th, and there's going to be no OTAs during this whole time period, which I was surprised about. I was expecting some OTAs myself, but I can understand maybe they want to take a break. They've been pumping out OTAs and stuff like that consistently, so just something to be aware of if you're expecting things to get nerfed, if you're expecting things to change dramatically. You can pretty much be confident that a lot of the new cards or any card really is not really being going to be changed in a drag way unless it changes on December 5th, right? So unless there's big changes next week, which honestly I don't expect, a lot of the releases, a lot of the card power levels are not going to be changing anytime soon. So that's just something to keep in mind. So the one thing that maybe bugs me is that there are some bugs me. Sorry, that was not intentional. There are some bugs in the game that I feel like should be fixed. Hopefully, it gets addressed in the next patch. But things like the Daredevil bug, I think that's been annoying people, as well as like using your deck building tools and your collection tools, as well as like just having notifications stick around even after you try to remove them. Those kind of bugs are just annoying. They're not game breaking like the Daredevil one, but they do bother me anytime I'm like, ooh, I hope this gets fixed. So hopefully next week when the patch rolls around, we'll have those adjustments. So that'd be pretty cool. But this is just something to keep in mind. There's not going to be any big nerfs, any big buffs to any of the cards being released this whole holiday week season. So just be aware of that. Next thing I'll talk about is the Martyr release. So Martyr's being released. I don't think I'm doing a first impressions on this card in particular. I just don't think it's that good. I mean, I've already made a spotlight review of this card, and this card is particularly low. I essentially said this is like the type of spotlight you don't want to be making as a Marvel Snap creator. It just has nothing enticing about it. The Martyr isn't very good, in my opinion, as a card, and doesn't really open up any playstyles. And then the cards that's next to the spotlight also are not worth spending resources on. You definitely want to wait for a more effective use of your keys. So it's just a weird release for Martyr. Just not the least enticing spotlight I think I've seen since it's been released. So just be aware of that. You know, maybe you like some of the cards, right? There's always going to be some people that need Jean Grey or something, and if you really need the card, like don't let my opinion stop you, right? Like if you want the card, get the card, but I wouldn't. I'm not hopeful for it, but it could. It's definitely on the track of something that could get adjusted in the future. However, you're going to be waiting a long time, right? Since we know that there's not going to be any OTAs or any big changes in the patch coming this weekend. You're going to be waiting like two plus months. So not you may as well wait until it gets buffed before you consider buying the card. And it is also a series 4 card. So let's say it does get nerfed or does get buffed, you can just spend your tokens on it if it is that critical. So really nothing jumps out to being a good spotlight week to spend your keys on. So I would just wait. So that's my thoughts on the card. And then the last like little news thing, it's just like the data mine stuff. I know some people were complaining about the Festival of Lights change. It used to be $5, but it was revealed to be a $20 bundle, which some people don't like, of course, right? And I personally am of the opinion if you think something's going to be cheaper, even if like it's better, it's a better deal. If it's more expensive, you're just going to have less people interested. So during the data or the analysis on this is actually a better bundle at this $20 price tag than it was at the $5 in terms of progression. It's a better deal. 91% value, which is pretty high, pretty good. Um nothing to be sad about. I think as $5 it was like 84% value. However, $5 versus $20 is significantly more to shell for the same. Essentially, you're buying this because you like the variant, right? So you're paying $15 more for the variant. Even though the progression's better, you are still paying more for the variant. So um, that's generally the issue there. But it's just part of the issue with the data mines. They're not always accurate in terms of what the series will be, if it's a series 4, series 5, what the price of the bundles will be, and just any data mine you have to take with a grain of salt because it can also change it. The stats of cars and whatever based on their playtesting, their practice, and so you just have to be aware of it. But it is something to be aware if you are hoping to get this bundle. You know, bit unfortunate now, but what can you do? But overall, that's the news. It should be a slow cycle for Marvel Snap, since there's not going to be a lot of people working on it. Most people are going to be on their break, so what can you do? But should be fun. Hope you guys enjoy this. A lot of cool decks around. I do think Alioth is doing a lot of things right now, so you have to be aware of that. The junk decks, I don't think have been too much of a problem after release. It was kind of annoying after release, but now it's like you're aware of what they're doing, so it's not as bad. And people are playing like random carnages and stuff to kind of deal with that. So overall, not the worst in the world, but we'll see how the meta changes over time. It's always surprising how nothing can change in the patches, but people can change the meta with just new cards and new ideas. So we'll see if that sticks around. But that's all I got for you today. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.
Educated calling snap. Once you watch him, you won't go back. He'll teach you to Marvel Snap. Your skills will be